Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go! Last week I ended up at a pet store I don't normally go to. They didn't carry the cat litter brand I use or have gallons of urine remover, but I picked up a smaller size and a substitute litter to tide me over. I pay and ask if they have a restroom because my daughter is nagging me to go. The clerk curtly says they do have a restroom, but it's for employees only and lists off nearby establishments with public restrooms. So I put my stuff in the car and we walked across the streets to Jack in the Box. They wanted me to buy something to use a restroom, so I get annoyed but purchased a small drink. We head back to the car and different employees outside sweeping. She sees us coming from the Jack in the Box and loudly states, "Our parking is for customers only." I put my daughter in the car, grabbed my litter and urine remover, and walked past her into the store while saying so sorry. I won't do it again. I returned my items while the parking lot girl looked on with a shocked Pikachu face. The manager tried to apologize and I accepted her apology, saying it's no problem at all. I'm sorry I bothered them. Then I drove to Petco and brought what I actually wanted. Years ago, I rented a room in a house with 3 roommates. The house was in a great location, quiet street, near my work, fenced-in yard, a nice pool, and all 3 of my roommates were fine. We lived together for 2 years and then it was time to renew the lease. I wanted to stay in the house for another year, but the 3 roommates weren't able to. 2 of them were getting ready to find apartments with their boyfriends. One was taking a job offer in another state. The landlord said if I could find new roommates, he would renew the lease. I would get to upgrade to the master bedroom, which had a private bathroom and a walk-in closet. I was pretty excited about it. My friend and her co-worker were looking for a place, so I talked to them about it. I was exceedingly clear that I didn't want to live in a party house. We talked for a while about how I had been through that in a previous living situation. They promised that they weren't like that. We found a 3rd roommate on Craigslist. It went downhill so fast. The Craigslist roomie was actually great. It was my friend and her friend who started throwing parties like 4 to 5 nights a week. I had to be up at 5 a.m. during the week for work. They would bring groups of people home from that bar at like 2 a.m. No regard for noise. Often, strangers from the bar would block my car in. They would eat my food, leave messes/garbage everywhere. Stuff like that. I tried talking to them as respectfully as possible and it never went well. The friend of friend ended up being very combative. She put a sign with a C word on my door. I don't even remember all the little slides, but she was on a mission to drive me out of the house. It all got to be too much, so I found a new place to live. Craigslist roomie decided that he wanted to move out as well. We told the remaining roommates, and they said they had friends who would take the empty rooms. Anyway, the entire house was furnished by my previous roommates who had left it all to me. Nothing in the house belonged to the landlord. I sorted everything out with the landlord and had my name removed from the lease. I had the internet cable disconnected because it was in my name. Then I made a post on Facebook Marketplace. Fully furnished house, everything must go. Free. My very first response was from a guy who said he had a big moving truck and could take everything. No idea why, I didn't ask. He came and emptied the house. All that was left was whatever belonged to the remaining roommates. The friend of friend roomie came home just as a man was pulling out the driveway. She walked in, saw the empty house, looked at me and said, "You're a witch," then stormed off to her room. I could hear her on the phone crying about what happened. She took everything. It was definitely my most pity moment, but I don't regret it at all. Alright, backstory. We had a neighbor, let's call her Useless because that's what she is to society. Useless was a foster parent and did it for the money and made the kids do her chores and do everything for her, and she had no job except caring, if that's what you want to call it, for these foster kids. The story begins around 2013 when she starts letting the kids do whatever they want. Useless had around 8 because she got it licensed as a group home. Think Shazam except for kids who act terribly because they have no one to care or be in charge of them. It started when all of the kids were at the end of the street, in a loop or cul-de-sac. And one of the foster kids, let's call her Reckless because that's the kind of driver she is, was driving the foster mom's car down the street at 60 miles per hour down in a cul-de-sac when all of the neighbor kids are riding bikes and playing kickball. Everyone got out of the way. Kinda. There was my best friend's sister down on her bike and she was still learning so wasn't moving fast enough. So her dad picked her and the bike up and off the street. This is when Useless comes walking down the street saying that we endangered her money, and sadly she didn't mean the car, she meant the foster kid. Until my best friend's dad, let's call him George, went freaking bonkers and cussed her out about how she should treat the kids better and stop using it as a pyramid scheme, yada yada. A lot of adult stuff I didn't care about because, well, I was a kid. And then Useless walked back up the street because she knew George would have killed her if she was standing there longer. Attack number 2 from Useless. She abused her kids and put one in the trunk of her car. This time 5 people on the street filmed it from inside their windows and no one called the police because a kid fought the foster mother and got out. Useless started getting mad, screaming. Keep in mind, it was late like 3 AM, I don't know why 5 people were up but whatevs. And Useless woke up everyone by screaming, hitting her car's hood so loud the alarm went off. George started his plan to get back at her for everything. He started getting all the footage and all of the neighbor stories about the driving and the trunk. And while they were planning, Useless let her cat out in the front even though they have a gate. And it's a cat. Who the hell lets out a cat? But anyway, the cat started attacking these bunnies that were being cared for by the whole community because they have been there for 15 years, so a ton of generations. The bunnies went everywhere. We saved 2 and kept them inside until the next day when we put them back in their hole, but little did we know Useless let the cat out except this time she carried it to the hole, laughed and walked away. Excuse my language, but what the heck is wrong in your head to kill defenseless bunnies? The cat killed the last 2. And the next days, Useless started boarding up their windows because they have been broken in parties. While they are boarding up the windows, 3 squad cars show up to the house and start knocking when Useless comes out and she automatically gets handcuffed and nothing was said other than you are being arrested for possession of an illegal substance. She automatically gets handcuffed and nothing was said other than you are being arrested for possession of an illegal substance, child abuse, and child endangerment. Then they read her rights. Everybody walked to George's house to talk to him while they put the kids in a squad van. It turns out George has been gathering evidence of every single thing she has done by following her car when she went to buy an illegal substance, and he filmed it and sent everything to the cops and had them under investigation for years, but the police had no evidence until George. The kids are all okay, including the foster children. They all went to great homes. And they are in college now, but Useless has been in jail since then. I don't know how long she's going to be there, but I hope she rots. And the house they were in was sold to this couple, but everyone felt bad for them because what was in a beautiful house is a fixer-upper. Moral of the story is do not mess with George. This happened 5+ years ago and it's still one of my proudest moments. I was dating this guy Dan, going through a custody battle with his ex-partner over their toddler. We worked at the same bar with this girl named Billie Jean. Billie Jean was an old friend of Dan and had worked with him before. She also had previously worked with the mother of Dan's child, Rachel, and everyone was seemingly friends and remaining civil. Or so I thought. Billie Jean had secretly taken sides and wrote a terrible affidavit line about Dan. Dan somehow got a copy of it. I don't remember how the court process went. As I was reading it, I kept getting more and more irate. I hate liars, and one thing I really feel that crosses a boundary is using a child for leverage to hurt the other parent. Billie Jean was knowingly lying under oath and siding with Rachel to prevent Dan from parenting his kid, and he was by no means a bad dad. Well, Billie Jean had enemies. Enemies that I worked with and had easy access to contact. These enemies had sold Billie Jean a car that she wasn't paying them for. I didn't necessarily like the people who owned the car, but the enemy of my enemy is my friend. I called him up and told him that I came in peace. I asked if they had Billie Jean's address to give back their car. They did not. I passed on Billie Jean's information and waited for her to call me. Now, I was one of two people who could have ratted down the location of the car, and when Billie Jean called me to tell me her car got repoed, she said she had no idea who could have done it. It would have either been me or her ex Robbie. I tell her casually, well, I don't think it was Robbie. And I swear up and down, she responded with, well, who would have done it then? I held back laughter and finished the conversation with, oh, I don't know, that's so weird type of comments until she hung up. Dan Wan shared custody of his child and Billie Jean lost her bar job because she didn't have transportation to work an hour away. To this day, I wonder if she ever pieced together that it was me. I don't like liars. This happened the other year when lockdown was serious. My mate tested positive for COVID, so I did the proper thing of cancelling my holiday and isolating for 2 weeks. This was right at the start before self-testing was available, so I just followed the guidelines. It was a very cold fortnight, so cold that at some point the adhesive on my parking permit fell from the windscreen into the footwell. When I finally returned to the world, I go to my van and see a parking ticket for the previous night. My van hadn't moved in 2 weeks, and the same parking attendant every day just following the rules hits me with a £75 fine. I called the company up and got them to check their payment record. My £25 a month permit was in date and they have my vehicle details. They told me the rules on the signs are clear, and if you don't display a ticket, you will receive said fine. No ifs or buts. I tried to fight it further and further, going nowhere. With my stubbornness, it ended up costing me nearly £200. Then it dawned on me, if they are not checking a system and just looking for a permit, why am I still paying for it? I called up and cancelled my monthly renewal and kept hold of the permit. That was about 21 months ago. It's so bleached from the sun you can hardly make it out, but it's valid in every way that matters to the parking attendant, and I keep saving an extra £25 a month. It was a busy day at the park and I was doing my best to keep up with the demands of the visitors. That's when I saw her, a woman with a severe haircut and a sense of entitlement that emanated from her like a toxic cloud. I knew her type and I praised myself for trouble. "Excuse me, sir," she said, marching up to me. "I'd like to reserve this picnic table for my family's use today." "I'm sorry, ma'am," I replied, "but we do not do reservation for picnic tables. It's first come, first serve." "Well, that's not good enough," she snapped. "I demand that you make an exception for me. I have a big family coming and we need that table." "I understand, ma'am," I said, trying to remain calm. "But I can't make an exception. If you get here early enough, you should be able to find a table that's suitable for your needs." "That's not good enough," she repeated. "I want that table, and I'm not leaving until I get it." At this point, I could tell that she wasn't going to listen to reason. I made a mental note to keep an eye on her, and I walked away to attend to some other matters. A few hours later, I received a report that Karen was causing a scene at the playground. Apparently, she had taken issue with some children who were playing too loudly, and she had started screaming at them to be quiet. When some parents intervened, she lashed out at them as well, calling them all sorts of names. I rushed over to the playground and I could see that Karen was in a full-blown rage. Her face was red, her eyes were bulging, and she was waving her arms around wildly. "Ma'am, please calm down," I said, trying to defuse the situation. "There is no need to be so upset. The children are just playing." "You don't understand. she said, turning her fury on me.
I demand that you make those children be quiet. I pay good money to come here, and I'm not going to put up with this.
I'm sorry, ma'am, I said firmly, but we can't control the volume of the children's play. It's a public park, and everyone has a right to enjoy it. At this point, Karen completely lost it. She started hurling insults and threats at me, calling me every name in the book. I tried to reason with her, but it was clear that she wasn't listening. As I tried to walk away, Karen grabbed me by the arm and tried to pull me back. I had no choice but to defend myself, and I gently pushed her away. And that's when things turned violent. Karen launched herself at me, swinging wildly and trying to scratch and bite me. I managed to restrain her and call for backup, and she was eventually escorted out of the park by the police. It was an ugly scene, and one that I won't soon forget. It's a reminder that even in the most peaceful places, there are people who are willing to resort to violence to get their way. As a ranger, it is my job to keep the peace and make sure everyone can enjoy the park. But sometimes, that is easier said than done. This story is retold from a friend. He was working with a landlord company as a handyman of sorts. He hated his job. Anyways, he got assigned to visit some tenants to do heat readings in their apartments, and the tenants had gotten the information beforehand. What do I do if they aren't home or won't open? He asked, only to be met by a snarky, "They will," by his boss. Fast forward a few days, now he's out knocking doors and doing heat readings. A little over halfway through, one tenant doesn't open the door. He checks his note. Nobody had been written up as away for that time. So my friend promptly continues with the other apartments, goes back to the door and knocks again. No response. So he sat down on the stairs and waited until his shift ended. And a few hours into overtime, with overtime pay. Boss called him and asked where he was, and the company car as well. And he explained the situation. The tenant hasn't yet opened the door. The boss got mad, and even more mad when he got informed that my friend was going to clock in overtime for today. He informed the boss that he was refused instructions for cases such as the tenant not opening the door. So he was waiting for the tenant to do so. Boss tried to fire him, but the union actually packed my body, so he got to keep his job. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching and see you next time.